Planning Commission meeting. Just a few items to point out that we are broadcasting this meeting live on channel 27, local channel 27, and the Pacific Coast TV's website. So anyone out there can join. We have community members in the audience, and you are welcome to speak during either the general public forum and or on the specific item. Chair Reddick will open and allow comment during each of those items. Those wanting to speak, please raise your hand. We will allow a 3-minute time. If you're on a telephone only, *6 to unraise and raise, and *9 to mute and unmute. Otherwise, there's features on your computers, laptops, etc. We had no public comment as of this afternoon at the end of the day to give the commissioners, so there's nothing there that we've seen. I thank you for your patience on these remote meetings, and I will now hand it over to Chair Reddick to officially begin tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Bridget. I'll call this meeting to order and invite everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Bridget for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Benjamin?
I am present.
Commissioner Gorin?
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez? Not here yet. Vice Chair Polgar?
Here.
And Chair Reddick?
Here. Our next item of business is to take up approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was March 23rd of this year. Do any commissioners have edits or comments on those minutes?
Motion.
If not, a motion to approve the minutes would be welcome.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
Thank you. Bridget, a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Commissioner Benjamin?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorin?
Yes.
Commissioner or Vice Chair Polgar?
Yes.
And Chair Reddick?
Yes.
Motion passes.
That brings us to a public comment part of this meeting. Like all planning commission meetings, we entertain comments from the public at this point in the agenda on any item the public wishes to comment on, with the exception of our one public hearing item that is to follow this. So if any members of the public would like to address the commission, please raise your hand. This is the right time.
I see no one recognizing no one.
Okay, well, I will not open public hearing at this point then, and move on to our next item, which is the adoption of a mitigated negative declaration and coastal development permit for the project at 698 Terrace Avenue. Scott, will you be presenting on that?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, members of the public that are logged in this evening. Nice to see everyone. I'll go ahead and present a PowerPoint presentation with a few slides to illustrate the project. Almost there. Okay, as mentioned, this project involves a new single-family residence at 698 Terrace. A little background on the project. It includes a one-story split-level residence with a total floor area of 3,661 square feet, which includes a 3-car garage. The project would also include removal of 8 eucalyptus trees within the building footprint of the new residence. New curb gutter and sidewalk and driveway apron would be installed along the project frontage. And the project conforms to all the zoning regulations, including the riparian buffer requirements. Permits requested include a coastal development permit and architectural review. And as far as noticing, the project site was posted when the application was initially submitted, and then posted again last month to advertise tonight's meeting. We also published an ad in the HMB review and sent out notices to all the neighbors within 300 feet. This slide shows the site and surrounding area. And the project site is located on Terrace Avenue at the top, just before you enter Pacific Ridge Plan Unit development. Now, the site is one of two vacant building sites within the Highland Park neighborhood. Large eucalyptus trees exist along the back and right side of the subject property. And then a ephemeral drainage runs along the back of the property. The site is zoned R1 district that allows for single family residences. Now, a few items for the Planning Commission to consider: compliance with the development standards, the zoning regulations, as well as substantial conformance with our single family residential design guidelines, drainage and grading, as well as adequacy of the CEQA document. Now, this slide shows the proposed site plan. Includes the building footprint, the new driveway, and I tried to emphasize the location of the 3-foot retaining wall that's also included in the project and noted in blue there. And then also the red line indicates the required 30-foot riparian buffer from the center line of the creek in the backyard. Now, we did receive an inquiry about the plan set showing the riparian buffer, and it is a little bit tricky to see that it gets a little bit lost in the topographic lines on the site plan, but it is called out in the 30-foot buffer from the center line. Now, this slide shows the proposed front elevation as it faces Terrace Avenue. And as you can see, it's a single-story house built to the 20-foot mark, which is our maximum allowed height for a single story. The 3-car garage includes 2 garage doors and then a covered entryway. Stucco siding has been selected for the siding, and it would be painted in a light gray. Composition shingles in more of a darker gray. And again, I've tried to emphasize the 3-foot retaining wall on the right there in blue. This slide also shows the existing grade in a broken line, which shows that there is going to be some cuts and fills associated with this project. Opposite that, this is the rear elevation that faces the eucalyptus trees and ephemeral drainage. Rear elevation. And then this is the right side, east elevation, that faces Pacific Ridge and more of the eucalyptus trees. Again, you have the broken line that shows the existing grade that would, where some of the cuts would take place in order to create a flatter pad for the new home. Opposite that, this is the left side, west elevation, facing Highway 1 and the Pacific Ocean. And then the floor plan. And in the middle there, you see there are some steps in sort of the center of the new home that provides the terracing, a sort of a double suite, as well as 2 additional bedrooms. And then there was also a section included in the plan set that shows the 20-foot height mark and gives you a better indication of the cuts and fills. Grading and drainage plan, obviously a lot going on here, but I just wanted to show that, you know, kind of in relation to the section, that there would be some cuts and fills, and that this is a, you know, the site slopes down from terrace. I've also included the projected earthwork with a net off-haul of 63 cubic yards. This would trigger a grading permit. Now, as far as drainage, bioswales have been designed along the sides of the new residence that would capture the stormwater from the new impervious surface of the building, and then direct the stormwater into a detention basin in the back of the residence that is outside of the 30-foot riparian buffer. Now, engineering staff have reviewed both the grading and drainage, and they're supportive of the approach as shown in the plan set this evening. Landscape plan, drought tolerant plants have been selected for both the front and the sides of the new residence. Pervious pavers are included for the new driveway. And as far as landscaping, the rear of the residence is proposed to be left as, you know, as it is today, with the addition of the bioswale in the back. Now, the X's back here, this indicates to remain as is. It does look as if there's going to be plantings back there, but that's to remain as is. Now, you'll notice that there was a tree protection plan included in the plan set as well. It does show the removal of 8 eucalyptus trees within the vicinity or within the building footprint. The rest of the trees would be preserved. Now, back in the spring of 2016, there was substantial tree trimming that took place on the site. When staff was notified of this, we did go out and stop the tree trimming from moving forward and explained that permits do need to be issued before any tree trimming takes place. We then engaged with the project biologist to go out and take a look at the site and the trimming that had taken place, just to see if there was any impact to sensitive species. The conclusion was, fortunately, no, there was no impact. So we were happy about that. But since then, the applicant has not done any sort of tree trimming to our knowledge on the site. Now, speaking of bioresources, you know, anytime we have a project that's within the vicinity of any potential sensitive habitat, we do hire a biologist to prepare a biological resource assessment. That was done, and later a wetland delineation. The 2 bio documents were sent out for a 45-day review comment period. And one of the conclusions of the bio assessment and wetland delineation was that the ephemeral drainage did not have any riparian vegetation. Therefore, the riparian buffer would be measured from the center line of the creek. So that information was then handed off to the design team to design the new house. The biologist also recommended mitigation measures to protect any potential, any bioresources within the vicinity from the proposed project. That led us to drafting of the initial study for CEQA, and we included all the recommendations of the biologist into the initial study and draft mitigated negative declaration. The environmental document was circulated for 20 days for a comment period, and we did not receive any comments on the environmental document. And that's about all I had. We do have the design team logged in this evening. We also have the project biologist, if the planning commission has any questions. But before I hand it off, I do have one last item. We are recommending a minor change to some of the language in the draft condition of approval A7 to emphasize the landscaping that's allowed within the riparian buffer. So that's one change we're suggesting that the planning commission considered to the conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I believe, just to note that Commissioner Hernandez seems to have joined us now. Are there any clarifying questions from commissioners for Scott? Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Scott. The changes in the conditions that you're recommending, could you put them up on the screen so we can kind of chew on them a little bit?
Certainly. Give me one moment here.
That's fine. Yeah, it doesn't have to be right now. If there are other questions, I'm sure he can multitask better than I can. So,
Okay. Okay, what we would recommend is modifying condition of approval A7, landscape maintenance, to emphasize the plants and landscaping that's permitted in the buffer, which is essentially riparian vegetation and split rail fencing along the edge.
So that hasn't been written yet?
No, sir.
Commissioner Benjamin, any follow-up on that?
I guess it's not really a question. Yeah, there will be follow-up, but there's no
Okay.
question.
Okay, good point. Commissioner Gorn.
Hi there. I just had a quick question. How long has this project been going? What's you mentioned 2016 as tree trimming, but how long has this project been under review?
So the initial application was submitted back in 2015.
Okay.
Which was a preliminary review. And then the site was sold. So the ownership changed. The project was then reevaluated by the new owner, or revised, and resubmitted. And we went through several rounds of revisions. We then needed to update the biological report and wetland delineation before finalizing the initial study. So several rounds of revisions took place before we were able to present this to the Planning Commission.
Okay. So basically it's been under review since 2016, so about
Yes.
5 years. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Vice Chair Polgar, please. You're muted, Sarah.
I'm chasing my image around. It keeps moving. So sorry about that. So I had a couple of clarifying questions. One is, I just wanted to clarify, is it a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom? I don't know that it matters, but it was just when I was looking at the plans, it looked like it was a 4-bedroom. Is that, or are those separate you said mini suite or separate suites or something?
You are correct. So technically 4 bedrooms. There's a master bedroom, a mini suite, and then 2 sort of normal bedrooms,
Okay.
regular
Okay.
sized bedrooms.
I see. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood. And then a couple of questions actually. I just wanted to be clarify also. It sounded like there was. I had thought that there was much more, or at least maybe what I read. It sounded like there was a lot more off haul of excavated fill. So it is only it is the 63 cubic yards is the net off haul.
Yes, that's correct. So that would
Okay.
be the net off haul estimated.
Okay.
So,
And then the and then the other questions are more about the kind of about the landscaping. There was a mention of a box tree planting in the front. That was one of the, I think it was one of the conditions. And first of all, if you could point it out, I wasn't sure where it was in the plan and kind of, and maybe why that was a condition of approval, if that was, because it wasn't clear to me if that was to address like a tree removal or something like that. It was just an interesting condition or in there.
yes, it's a standard condition of approval that we normally have, where we require at least 1 tree, 24-inch box within the front yard setback. Let's see.
Okay. I should have known that. Okay.
Yes, condition D2.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies that. And then another, so questions about in the arborist report, it talked about, I guess it looks like there's an original report back in, or maybe a few back in 2016 and maybe updated in 2017. It looks like there's a few different letters from the arborists. And in one of them, it talks about how the eucalyptus grove, it talks about it's in poor fair condition, and the recommendation is to remove all of the trees because the grove would, if part of the or some of the trees would leave hazard trees exposed to the elements. And so I wanted to just make sure that maybe there was an update to that report or something. I just want to make sure that was addressed because I didn't want to, we're not actually, it sounds like they're just removing 8 of the trees. So there will be some of them left. has the arborist been able to determine that the ones that would remain would not be a hazard then? Like, are we not putting the house in a place that will then be at a risk of trees that are now not able to withstand the elements now that they're exposed? That's all. I just wanted to check on that.
Yes, that's correct. So some revisions took place to the project, specifically the retaining wall along the right-hand side was much larger when the project was initially submitted. And revisions took place to reduce the footprint of the retaining wall, which part of it was there was concern that the new retaining wall would be cutting into the roots of some larger eucalyptus trees there. So that was initially the recommendation was to remove the trees higher, above the site. And when the project was revised to a smaller retaining wall, that recommendation was removed. So that was part of it.
Okay. And then maybe the other question is, I was a little confused about there was the mention of the tree trimming that took place in 2016. And so it sounded like I didn't understand maybe you could explain what the violation was with that tree trimming specifically. And because it sounds like since then there's been no additional tree trimming on the eucalyptus.
That's correct. So I believe what took place was the new owner was unaware that they had to wait until permits were issued before doing any major trimming on the trees. And our main concern was potential impacts to sensitive species, mainly nesting birds and butterflies. We were, gearing up to draft the initial study for CEQA, and any major trimming needs to take place once the CEQA document is certified and the permits are approved. And I think
So the issue was major, it was major trimming and the timing of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and once we were notified, we went out and explained that to the crew that they needed to wait until permits are issued.
Okay,
And they
thank you.
stopped.
That clarifies it. Thank you.
Mhm.
That was all the questions I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Benjamin?
Yeah, thank you. I will just add, I've noticed that pre-development is a rich tradition in that neighborhood. There was a lot a little further down where I saw trunks of trees that were left prior to coastal development permits go through. So I really appreciate staff gently, compassionately helping the applicant understand the need for a better process there. But speaking of those trees, one of the things that was really interesting and different for me from any other coastal development permit I have ever seen in my 15 odd years of doing this was the letter that was attached to the second page of the plans that was to the applicants, I gather, from Alanto Properties seeking their permission to remove trees. I haven't seen that before, and I wonder if you could shed some light on why that was necessary.
Yes, similar to Commissioner Polgar's clarifying question, when the project was initially submitted, it included removal of trees on Alanto's property. At the time, we told the applicant, you need their permission in order to propose anything on, your neighbor's property. And then that's when they solicited the letter from Alanto. Since then, the project has been revised to preserve the trees on Alanto's property. Therefore, the letter really isn't necessary at this point, but it's still in the plan. It still remained in the plan set. So
I see. So these trees that were identified at the time as number 2, number 4, number 5, and number 6 are actually uphill and to the north of this lot, so that they would be part of the Alanto Pacific Ridge, if you like.
correct, and the survey reflects the location on Alanto's property.
Okay, and my understanding is that these trees, these eucalyptus trees, were there's a question, or at least there was some discussion at the Coastal Commission at the time the Pacific Ridge project was brought up. Do you know whether these trees are in the area that was considered riparian by the Coastal Commission or not?
Now, similar to Commissioner Gorn clarifying question, this project has been on file for quite some time at City Hall, and normally on an annual basis, we have coordination meetings with coastal staff, and at several of the coordination meetings, we, in person, not virtual, we actually sat down with coastal staff and discussed this project. Kind of the uniqueness about this lot. And one of the unique things is that if you look at the certified map for the Coastal Commission's appeals jurisdiction, this site does not show up as within the appeals jurisdiction. But due to the ephemeral drainage in the back, we wanted to make for certain that our interpretation was aligned with coastal staff's, that the project site is actually in the appeals jurisdiction, and they agreed to that. At the same time, we asked them, is there anything else with this project that you would recommend doing, or anything that we're missing here? Because we want to do everything in our power to avoid any sort of appeal to the Coastal Commission. We want to get it right now. And they did say that we needed an updated wetland delineation. So we went out and did that. We hired, had our project biologist update the wetland delineation that had been done by the previous owner. And we asked coastal staff, was there anything else? And nothing else came up. So I think that helps us in answering the question, how did the eucalyptus trees relate to this project as they did with Pacific Ridge? We were confident that coastal staff would see this in relation to our LCP, as opposed to the review that took place in Pacific Ridge and the settlement agreement that was associated with that development. Now, as far as the science, we do have our project biologist and his team logged in this evening, and they're available to answer any questions in relation to biotics and plants. What meets the definition of riparian, not only in our code but in science. So I'd encourage you to reach out. If you'd like to pull our biologist in, they would be happy to help us out as well.
We may go there. Could you put back up the map that you helpfully placed a red line on where the 30-foot riparian buffer is, please?
Certainly. A moment here. Screen share.
And while we're waiting for that to come up, I'll just note for my colleagues that I forwarded an email I received just a few minutes before the meeting from one of our citizens, Mike Ferreira, who wanted to comment on the record. So Bridget has that, and I'm sure that's forthcoming to the commission. So thank you, Scott. So I really had trouble finding this on the map. Even after our exchange this afternoon, I couldn't find it. So this is very helpful for me. Thank you. This is, which drawing is this? Is this C1 or C2, or is this a different bird altogether?
So this is the site plan within the architectural plans.
Okay, so it doesn't have a sheet number or something like.
Let's see, it's an A.
Okay, I'll go look for it. I just noticed, I couldn't help noticing when you put it up that line seems to cross some development. It looks to me like there's something extending out from the eastern edge of the house into the riparian zone. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Those are steps, and the commission is welcome to condition. We could certainly draft a condition that by changing that to a window that still meets egress requirements. We can check with the design team to see if they're okay with that. But we would recommend maybe changing it to a window that meets egress requirements, and thus removing the steps there.
Okay, I think I'll leave it for now, but thank you. I want to hear the public testimony and hear the other questions of commissioners before I continue in that direction. Thank you, Scott.
Do other commissioners have further clarifying questions? Commissioner Hernandez.
Hello, sorry for my technical difficulties logging in earlier. I noticed there's a lot merger with this project, and I know I'm sort of digging through a little bit of past history, but I just want to make sure that since the commission is going to, if the commission approves this project and there is a lot merger, the administrative cost of doing a lot merger should be negligible. In the past, these fees have been $500 or more. So I just wanted to clarify if this project does move forward, that former process is a former process. We're not charging steep fees for lot mergers when a project's approved from the Planning Commission.
So we have added a condition of approval requiring the lot merger prior to the issuance of the building permit. And we would keep track of our time. It would be a deposit-based fee, but the submittal fee for a lot merger has gone up a little bit since I think, maybe when Commissioner Hernandez, you were developing your residence. But you're right, it is a negligible fee. It's
Okay.
only a few hours
Great.
of work, so.
Great. Okay, great. And then clarifying, when did the property change hands?
Let's see, I believe it was 2015.
Okay, so the new applicants had this project before with you since 2015.
New applicant, yeah, 2015, I think it was 2016, early 2016, they acquired the property, so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Further clarifying questions? If not, then I will proceed to open the public hearing and welcome comments from members of the public in attendance who should signal by raising their hand, and Bridget will facilitate you being able to speak.
I have no one.
What was the intent? Sorry, what was the intent with the email that Commissioner Benjamin mentioned from a member of the public? Is that appropriate for hearing at this time?
Bridget, do you have it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forwarded it to Bridget and I forwarded it to Scott. I did not forward it to you, Jill. I apologize.
That's okay. I have
okay.
it. It's short and I'm happy to, I think we should just read it into the record
That would be helpful.
because we did not receive it as staff. So this is from Mike Ferrara. It was submitted today at 6:50 p.m. to Commissioner Benjamin. Dear Chair Benjamin, as I cannot attend tonight's meeting regarding the terrace application, I wish to state that applying the LCP to its minimum requirements in order to facilitate maximum development is inadequately protective of the city's environment and deserving of re-examination by the City Council. Please forward as necessary, Mike Ferrara.
Thank you for that, Jill, and thanks to Mr. Ferreira for his comments.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Jill, would it be possible for you to forward that email to all of us? I'd like to just read through that.
I'll do it.
Okay, I was just
Bridget, you're
gonna,
busy.
I'm just hitting, I was just gonna hit send right now,
Oh,
so,
go for it. Okay,
yeah.
you're so good. Thank you.
My interpretation of forward as necessary was that it was intended to be a writing to the record.
I think you're right.
And
Well,
he
if there's-
did, he sent me a subsequent message apologizing for mistitling me. So due respect.
No worries. Well, Bridget, if we still see no members of the public wishing to comment, I'll close the public hearing.
I see none, and
I'll
I forwarded
close-
you the email, so you should get it momentarily.
Thank you. I close the public hearing and open the floor for commissioner discussion. Anybody would like to lead off? Commissioner Benjamin, thank you.
Sure, and thank you. My sense is that this is an appropriate kind of development. I have some concerns at the margins that I would like to resolve. I don't want to make this a really heavy burden to resolve, but I think there are important questions that we ought to address. The first is that we don't have a condition for protecting the riparian buffer. That I know that staff is very good at whipping stuff up in a hurry, but we've been in the situation where we have regretted, or at least I have regretted, some of the language that we ended up with in the permit. So I'm hopeful that we can have language that makes it clear that there are a certain set of permitted uses that's defined in our zoning ordinance. And lawns and gardens and ornamentals, those aren't permitted. Restoration and riparian uses and a few others are. But that section of 1838 to me is the guiding principle of 1838-075, I think it is. And I want to be sure that we sew that up clearly so that we get that right. The second concern I have really came from looking at the document on the that was attached, requesting permission to remove trees from the property that is part of Ilanta, Pacific Ridge. And it got me thinking that I ought to look and see what it is, because Ilanta's response said, you're responsible for getting all state and local permits to remove stuff. And of course, I understand that they've revised the project so as not to need to remove those trees. Nevertheless, the riparian corridor on the uphill side of this property line is the same riparian corridor that's on the lower side of the property line. And it made me want to stop and look at the Pacific Ridge Coastal Development Permit to understand how they define the riparian corridor. So I want to preface this by saying I have been schooled by Vice Chair Polgar to understand the limitations of the value of eucalyptus. So I'm not here demanding that all eucalyptus should be saved at all costs. Thank you, Sarah. And I mean that. At the same time, I understand after reading that coastal development permit as reflected in the language of even the 2011 dedication of open space, that the Coastal Commission made findings that the eucalyptus were actually part of the definition of the riparian area. Now, we have language in our code that says, there's a list of vegetation preceded by a statement that says essentially these are plants that like fresh water. There's probably a much more precise language. And the Coastal Commission said, maybe this isn't native, but it still likes fresh water. We're including it. The applicant agrees to include it, so it's there. This may be a completely different perspective for the applicant, but it is the same stream. And I want to be sure I understand why this is different and that we're being consistent in our application. I can think of another intermittent stream where the city's position was because we couldn't find a combination of two of the species that were on that list, that it couldn't qualify as an intermittent stream. And I can tell you that when that went to the judge, she was having none of it. So I want to be careful that we're doing a good job of understanding what we mean when we say riparian vegetation, and that we're being consistent in our understanding. It's a little ironic because here we are on the edge of a new local coastal program, I hope, in just a few days. But that also concerns me. The final concern I had was in looking at the map that Scott put up, where we have an incursion into the riparian buffer zone. This is exactly the kind of thing that I think is not permitted. And I wish that it hadn't gone this far, to be honest. I think a window is an appropriate replacement, and I certainly would suggest going there. The sheet that I saw that showed the limits of grading went right out to what I imagined to be the edge of the 30-foot riparian buffer zone. And it left me wanting to understand how, what our plan is, and perhaps the applicant or his and her representatives can help us understand this, how they will manage the problem of sheet wash causing erosion in that area. You know, erosion is a difficult process to ignore. And once we make cuts or grades, things could still change. So I appreciate that we have BMPs and, you know, drainage swales, and that's all great. I'm not saying that we didn't do that, but good vegetative cover, maybe some trees that are rooted to hold the soil might be useful in this context. And I'm not the expert, I'm the first to admit it, but I think it's important for this applicant and for all the people downstream from this applicant to have clarity on what's going to happen here, because it will have ramifications for all of them. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. Other commissioner comments, discussion? Vice Chair Polgar.
So I just thank you, Commissioner Benjamin, for your comments. I think one thing actually I also just to up front to say I agree about the incursion into the 30-foot buffer. I don't think that should be. I mean, there's a buffer for a reason. So I think that the window sounds like it's a reasonable replacement for that. So and I do want to say that I had not understood that that's where the buffer ended. So it almost, I actually would really appreciate it, because I felt like I completely misunderstood where the 30-foot buffer went to in reviewing the plans. And now I'm realizing that I think I had a very different understanding of it. And so perhaps could we show that, Scott, do you mind showing the plan that showed the red line? Because and just so that we're clear that that is actually the 30-foot riparian buffer that we need to be applying in this.
Certainly.
It looked different in some of the plans. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I didn't realize that. I must admit, when I was reviewing, I didn't look at them closely enough, although I really was trying to understand it. So so that's definitely. I agree that we definitely need to have the additional language in measure 7, as Commissioner Benjamin was mentioning, and I think that it would also be very important not just to include language about kind of what not to do within the riparian buffer, but also to give them a very clear path forward for restoration of better riparian habitat. And that, I mean, that needs to, it shouldn't just be like, hey, we're gonna, fly by the seat of our pants. Kind of, I do want language that makes that, like, gives them a clear and encouraged path forward, because I think if they are interested in restoring the riparian vegetation, that would be great. And so I don't want it to just be a do not do. It would be nice if there was also a, hey, we see that this is the appropriate thing or a good thing that could happen here. And so, and clearly that would require planning and approval and stuff. I'm not suggesting it just they take it and do it their own way. But anyways, that's something I think that would be valuable, so that there's kind of a positive path forward potentially. I really think I heard, Scott, you talk about how that there was a clear indication that at the application of our local coastal program in kind of a review of this is the appropriate path, that we're not kind of taking stuff from the Pacific Ridge and applying that here. That's not what you're hearing from the Coastal Commission, and I'm not voicing this or explaining this very well. And I guess my point is that in our local coastal program that we currently have, I mean, eucalyptus is not a riparian vegetation, and in fact, it's called out as a noxious weed, the blue gum. So I don't want us to, I don't think it's appropriate to make any indication that we would consider that riparian, that's considered riparian vegetation. So I don't want to do that because I don't think it's supported by our local coastal program. But that all said, I also don't think it's a great idea just to cut all the trees down. However, I am still a little concerned based on the arborist report that they're taking out some of the trees, but then there's no plan for managing the tree. I'm not suggesting they take out the other trees. I'm just worried that there isn't a plan for managing these trees, for doing proper pruning of them during the proper timeframes. And I want some assurance of that, partly because we're putting a house underneath them. And in the arborist report basically said, well, if you take away some of them, you're leaving now these trees that have not been exposed in that way in the past, and they may not perform very well, meaning they may drop a lot of branches and stuff like that. And if there hasn't been any tree trimming or maintaining of these trees, I mean, eucalyptus grow willy-nilly, and if you don't maintain them, they're going to, they drop big limbs and stuff. So I'm actually a little more than a little concerned about that hasn't necessarily been addressed. And maybe an appropriate part of the conditions of approval is that they need to maintain those trees or monitor and maintain them to make sure that doesn't become an issue. And maybe it's covered or I don't know if the existing conditions, like the one you showed, the landscape one, which I think was 7, would do it. But anyways, those are my initial thoughts. I think the house is appropriate. It's an appropriate design. I don't have it. I really liked the landscaping the choices of plants in the that they've chosen for the front. And so I don't have issues. It's just more, these are the kind of, they're somewhat along the same lines, I think, as Commissioner Benjamin's concerns, with the addition of this worry that what happens when we remove some of the trees based on what the arborist had to say.
Thank you, Vice Chair Polgar. Commissioner Benjamin, is that a new hand?
You're on mute.
You're muted, Jimmy.
Sorry, I only have 2 hands, but I did raise it again. Yes. No third. So I just wanted to acknowledge, I think Sarah and I are largely in agreement about these issues. What I think I heard her focusing on was eucalyptus as a widowmaker. I was thinking, and that is a reasonable concern. I was more concerned about the challenge of erosion that would result from the loss of a tree that's holding soil and the ramifications downstream. But I think both are real concerns. I have been looking at plate A, and it's my PDF page 41. I've blown it up to 150%. And maybe I've got ADD, but I can't find that buffer. And so if other commissioners did, good for them. I just couldn't see it. A question for the height measurement. Looking at the lot, it looks to me like there's terrace, and then the lot kind of slopes down gradually until it gets to the edge of the intermittent stream and slopes more steeply. But at some point, the top of the house is measured from some base elevation. And it was probably more visible on the map, but I couldn't find it. what are we taking the base elevation from street level, or where exactly are we taking the base elevation? Because we're within like 9 inches of maximum.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. We had the same question when they initially submitted the house design. And that's part of the reason why we requested a section to show that the entire house is within the 20-foot height limitation. And the way this is something that we don't see very often here in Half Moon Bay, a house that's actually proposed on a sloping lot. Most of our lots are fairly flat. So this is kind of a fun exercise. But the way we measure here in Half Moon Bay is from existing grade. We essentially draw a building envelope that's parallel to the slope and raise that by 20 feet. So it's essential that we have a section to show that the house is actually within the 20-foot mark and complies with the maximum building envelope. So I can flip to the section to illustrate that.
I'm happy to look, but that was a super clear explanation. So I'm imagining a plane, actually not a plane. I'm imagining a surface that's the same shape of the land, 20 feet above the parcel, and it has to avoid protruding into that. And of course, it has to satisfy the building envelope. Am I on the right track? Okay,
Yes.
very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for that. Commissioner Gorn.
Oh, hi. So again, you guys summed it up really well. This house seems to be appropriate for the spot, particularly since Pacific Ridge is right next to it. It's like right at the end of Terrace. But you know, I had the same sort of questions that everybody else did, which is, you know, I know eucalyptus trees are bad, and that became very clear in all of the summaries that it's, you know, we got to get rid of those things basically. And I wondered about, I looked through the arborist report and the biological report, and I did see a lot of concern about the riparian corridor. I didn't see, outside of classifying them as blue gum eucalyptus, I didn't really see any kind of evaluation of who uses those, what uses those trees right now, and what happens when you take them out. The erosion is, I would say, a serious problem, potentially. And so those two things I didn't see in the report, and I was surprised because, you know, you spent a long time on this. So did I just miss it? Are those things actually in the report about the animals, and so, you know, like the things that use those trees, and what happens when you take them out, and what's going to be done about that? Or is that, did I miss it? I guess that's the question.
I would recommend that we bring in the biologist to answer these questions. This is really what their specialty as far as protecting species that may live in the tree.
Can you tell me, is it Bill or Way?
Bill Stagnero, and he does have his team, I believe, logged in this evening. So maybe start with Bill, and he may bring in someone else as well.
Yeah, that sounds constructive.
Hello, this is Bill Stagnero.
Welcome, Bill.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I could speak to the wildlife value of the blue gum eucalyptus, and it is addressed in the biological resources assessment. Specifically, we mentioned it could be potential roost habitat for bats. It could be potential winter roost habitat for monarch butterflies. And it could also be nesting habitat for breeding birds. So it does have habitat value for those species. We do not address what happens if you take that away from them in that report. We merely have mitigation measures put in that report to protect those 3 wildlife species.
Any other questions for Mr. Stagnaro on this topic while we have him, Vice Chair Polgar?
Well, I just wanted a clarifying question maybe, and this may be something a biologist can answer, is that it looks to me, so at this point, the trees that are being removed are only ones that kind of intersect basically with the house foundation itself. So in terms of erosion, I'm not sure that necessarily any of the trees that are being removed will be an erosion issue. But then there's the issue of I just wanted to make sure am I correct that the trees that are being removed are the ones that are kind of within the footprint of the house?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Through the chair,
Commissioner Hernandez?
since we have Mr. Stagnaro here, I just want to follow up on some of the questions. Can you speak to the quality of the habitat? And with the plan that's proposed, what is your opinion on the quality of the habitat after this project is completed?
With regards to plants and wildlife,
To habitat for animals and other creatures, yes. How is this, the new landscape plan and the tree management plan going to support the wildlife? I'm speaking of the quality of that, as a biologist who's looked at this
Sure.
project and been involved.
no, I guess I should mention I'm a wildlife biologist, and the habitat there currently is poor to fair. A very ruderal lot, and blue gum eucalyptus. It does have some value for those species I had mentioned. It also sheds a lot of bark and drops toxins in the soil, and it makes it difficult for a lot of the native plants to grow underneath it. One of the plants that actually does well underneath it is poison oak, but not my favorite. However, I don't see this project negatively affecting the habitat in that the value of the habitat that was there as a ruderal field, gophers, foraging habitat for some raptors, etc., owls. So the footprint of the house would eliminate that small patch of foraging habitat in the grassland, and the removal of a handful of the eucalyptus trees. I don't see negatively affecting habitat for bats and butterflies and birds overall, considering the abundance of large trees in the area, including the eucalyptus trees that are remaining. So
And that's helpful, thank you. And do you think it would make for superior habitat if they came back to us with a plan to remove all the eucalyptus and replace it with more of a native tree or native scrub? Would that be a better place for habitat?
my personal opinion is yes. However, some people love eucalyptus. It does have value. Some red-tailed hawks and large raptors like to nest in it. However, the understory suffers from the eucalyptus. So my personal opinion is I would prefer to see the eucalyptus go away and have the native species there. However, if it's a monarch roost site, then no, I want to keep the eucalyptus there. So it's kind of a case-by-case situation.
Okay, thank you. I have no questions of the biologist, but I do have other questions. If other folks have questions for the biologist.
Let me ask Vice Chair Polgar, who has her hand up.
Well, I guess my comment or question is that it has to do with the plants that they've proposed to put in the front, because that's where they have the landscaping, struck me as like they would be good for pollinators. And so is that the case? Is that correct based on what you've seen with the plants they proposed?
I have not seen the planting palette for this project. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes, thank you. With respect to Commissioner Hernandez's thoughts about the impacts of potential plantings in that area that would, if, and this is a big if, there's not monarch habitat, or if we're persuaded that there's another alternative, do you have an opinion, or if it's not a biologist question, maybe I should defer, that there might be plants that could do a better job of holding the soil? I acknowledge that the trees that are being removed are under the site. However, those trees were still absorbing water. They were slowing the flow of water, and they had root structures that are no longer going to be there. So I think that, and I can't speak knowledgeably with respect to the health of the trees that are now going to be buffeted by forces that they might have been shielded from in the past. But it could be that there's vegetation that could do a better job of holding the soil. I mean, I know blackberry does, probably poison oak does, I don't know. But I'm interested in whether there are plantings, and if you don't have the palette, then I'll put it out as a comment more than a question, about trees in an area that's adjacent to a riparian corridor that could help stabilize that shoulder of the land just before it begins to slope off. That would be helpful for managing this and be consistent with the riparian buffer area that we're talking about.
Sure. No, that is beyond my expertise as a wildlife biologist, but I can certainly pose that question to our landscape designers and wetland and botanists. In addition, hydrologists may have a better idea of a palette.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the applicants team who are here tonight who might speak to this recurring question about erosion?
I'm not sure.
Jack Chu should be logged in this evening.
I have a telephone number, and I'm not sure if that might be him. I'm not for sure. And then I have a gentleman, or maybe someone by the name of Wei on here, but are we?
Through the
Yes,
chair.
part of the business team.
Yeah, and staff
So,
also
yes.
has, through the chair, staff has a bit of an answer regarding tree removal and erosion, which is best practices are to leave the stump and root ball in place. And that's a really important component for this kind of tree removal. It's something that you reviewed for the PG&E project on Highway 92, and it's pretty detailed, and it was challenging to get the right mix of what to do there for the same reasons that you're talking about eucalyptus trees once again, because they challenge us in different ways. So we would note that, and we are working on some revisions to your conditions. And when you're done with your discussion and getting any other clarification from the biologist or project applicant, we'd like a break, and we'd like to be able to complete the drafting that we're doing, review it, and then give you plenty of time to take a look at it on the screen or through email, so that you're confident about what we're proposing. If you're prepared for that tonight, if you're not, that's okay too. But that's just what we've been assembling while you've been discussing. Thank you.
Perfect. I think that's the right process. Commissioner Hernandez.
Just to follow up with my additional comments, first of all, I think this is a nice project. It fits into the neighborhood well. It takes advantage of the slope. It's an interesting and thoughtful design. And I think the owners are going to have, I hope they have a lot of fun with this project when it's completed. I am very supportive of removing the steps. I echo the comments that Sarah and Jimmy made earlier around wildlife protection. I will say especially the condition for the protection of the riparian corridor, I'd be interested in making sure that we actually put something together that has some substance to it and that can be used to hold people accountable. And I'm happy to move forward with that tonight if staff feel comfortable with all of that. My opinion on eucalyptus trees, like many of the people here, is mixed. If not for monarch butterfly and potential habitat and some of the interesting birds that can roost in them, my general opinion is they should be mowed down and replaced with something more suited for our climate. I will defer to the best practices management plan that city staff is comfortable with, but I'm supportive of more aggressively dealing with the eucalyptus. I think they're a blight on our community in general. And they do create problems. Somebody mentioned something about using blackberry as a potential device for protecting the soil. I made the mistake of putting blackberry and raspberry on my property. I would not recommend that to anybody. It's not a good plant. Those are my comments. I'm supportive of this project and supportive of moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. So if your property, Rick, were as sloped as this property, you might see value in it because of its extensive root structure. But I acknowledge that it has its drawbacks if you're on flats. Although I will say that the birds you like love blackberries. They will get to them before you ever see them.
Yeah, get the thornless variety if you're going to go with any of those types of plants. That would be the recommendation.
Let me just spend a minute on eucalyptus and our laws, because I understand the biology that we're talking about. I wasn't being facetious when I said I appreciated what I have learned from my colleagues. That said, I'm looking at our existing certified LCP in the zoning ordinance in 1838-090E. It says, the title is Control of Blue Gum Eucalyptus. That's just a title. And it says, and I quote, "It is not desirable to encourage wholesale removal of existing stands of blue gum. However, landowners shall be encouraged to remove blue gum seedlings to prevent the slow natural spread of the species. And two, the city shall not allow the planting of blue gum trees on public land and shall discourage private landowners from planting blue gum on private property." That was a 1996 zoning change. And of course, we have a new LCP coming that takes a dimmer view and has a different facility. But these are the laws that we're living with right now. And, there are good projects that we have to say no to, and there are bad projects that we have to say yes to. And this is the language I see. I share the concerns that have been raised. I appreciate the chance to hear the proposal. So I'm happy to take a break and have a good long look. I do wonder, given the surprising location of the 30-foot buffer relative to the center line of the stream, if it might not be appropriate to have some demarcation. I was looking at investment property in another part of the country, and around their wetlands and around their riparian corridors, they actually have granite monuments they put down. They require to be there in perpetuity to say to future landowners, So they don't get to forget where their limits are. And it may be that some kind of indication of where the limits are, maybe not a chain link fence, maybe something else that would make it clear where this is as it twists and turns would be appropriate. Something to think about.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. Vice Chair Polgar.
I had read exactly what you read, Commissioner Benjamin, and I don't think that anybody was necessarily suggesting to get rid of all of the eucalyptus here. I certainly would not recommend that without having a restoration plan to restore, to plant and revegetate with whatever, blackberry. You guys can argue the details, but I fully agree. But I will say that what my point earlier was more about but we want to be careful that we don't say that that eucalyptus is now can be considered part of what we could consider riparian vegetation under our existing LCP. It's pretty, to me, when I read it, it gave the list of things, and then separately it talks about blue gum as a noxious weedy species, and I see I have mixed feelings as well, because I do think that it can be very important habitat for monarchs, but it's so I think it is very much, as the biologist said, a case by case basis. You can't just make a single statement. I still am a little confused. I think, I hate to keep going back to this, but I am supportive of the project, but I just want to make sure that I'm on the right page with where the proposal, for instance, for the limit of grading and excavation is. So I know that you've shown a few times the red line on but I'm not sure that one actually showed the limit of excavation. And maybe I'm misunderstanding. I guess that there'll still be, I guess it's a limit of grading. Maybe that's the one. But it was very hard. I'm kind of wondering if I reviewed this with the right kind of understanding, glasses on, essentially, when I was looking at this. So I think that's why I'm hemming and hawing, is because I did not quite understand where certain boundaries were. And Commissioner Benjamin, I think it's an interesting idea to have maybe a marker that so that it's clear moving forward where the buffer ends for this. So if we could just, is the limit of the grading with that line, is that a pertinent thing to look at for us? Do we need to be aware of it and make sure that that's not extending too far or anything like that?
I think I saw the grading through the chair. I think I saw the grading line on sheet C1.2. I'm just looking for it now, Sarah.
Okay.
But I'm sure that Scott will correct me if I got it wrong.
Yes, I can share the plan set if it's helpful.
Okay.
C2, sheet C2, Sarah.
So there's nothing this all follows our requirements, I guess. I just want to make sure that we are all good on what's allowed within that buffer in terms of work, and that because I didn't see the buffer on the, what I thought was the buffer was not the actual buffer. And so that's why I just want to make sure that we are all right on the right side of our code requirements.
I mean, at the moment,
Scott, were you about to share that?
Yeah, sorry
C2?
about that. I lost it for a second, but then now I have it. Okay, I can scroll to the grading plan.
Thank you for that.
Okay, what I'm attempting to do here is zoom into the area, the riparian buffer. So the line right here is the center line of the creek. And what they've done is they've dimensioned the distance between the center line and the edge of the house. So for example, here's 30 feet from the center line to the edge of the detention basin.
So what do the hatched areas to the north of the house indicate
That is grading that would take place.
in the buffer?
Yes.
through the chair, I'm glad you asked that question because that does register a concern with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess the question is the grading necessary to protect the site, for the foreseeable future? I mean, if it's really necessary, we may want to think about that, right? Because the last thing anybody wants is a house falling into the riparian area because that doesn't have the appropriate grading.
Or with respect, the alternative way to phrase that might be, could there be a redesign so that the grading is not necessary, that the project doesn't create that risk?
Well, I think that's fair too.
We do have the engineer that was that's part of the design team logged in this evening. Jack Chu.
Yes, well, if he'd like to comment on the issues around the grading, we'd be happy to hear it.
Through the chair, while we're waiting to come online, I'm looking at the permitted uses within riparian zone, within riparian buffers. And I'm struggling to find the grading, to be honest.
Yes, well, that's the right question to ask. What is the law about that?
Scott, I let over, it just says way or we. I'm
Okay.
assuming it might be Jack. I'm not sure. Oh, there he is. I think you can speak now. See if,
Hello?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm an applicant and I'm not engineer. I believe for the grading, we need a civil engineer to explain that. And here
Okay,
is
so
architecture, yeah.
you're the applicant. Okay, hold on. I only have a mark and a phone number on here. Scott, do you know if the
Yeah,
phone is calling in?
he did confirm that he would be logging in this evening.
Well, in the meantime,
Yeah, they're both allowed to speak, so if they can unmute themselves, Whoever's on the
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm the designer for this project. Although the grading issue is we have the civil engineer should be locked into the Zoom meeting. Maybe he can help you and understand the cutting of the grade because the house is designed according to the contour line. So that's why you see garage will be on the high side and the bedroom will be on the low side.
So I have a mark on here. So is that our civil engineer, guys?
Well, I guess we can hear from him and find out.
Yeah, he can unmute if he'd like. He can speak. There you are.
Bridget, it's Mark Massara, and I'm just watching.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure there's not very many
No,
people
you're
on here.
doing
So
a great job.
I apologize. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I don't see anyone other than Bill and the owner and then the designer on here currently called in. So if the designer or the civil engineer is calling in, I haven't seen him come in yet.
All right, well, if he does in a timely basis, we'd be happy to hear from him. Before we proceed, go ahead, Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to mention, as long as I'm looking at the zoning ordinance, I'm looking at the development standards within riparian buffer zones, which is the thing that we've just been talking about. And I see the qualities that the standards require the removal of vegetation be minimized, that development conform to natural topography, and that erosion potential is minimized. That provisions have been made to keep runoff and sedimentation from exceeding pre-development level. You get the idea. So there's a concern here that's supported in the standards.
Yeah, thank you for finding that. Before we proceed to taking a break and letting staff have time to organize responses to these, I just wanted to share a few personal observations about it. I think there's a lot of good about this project. I like it's a one-story house. I like that it has three-car garage space for 3 cars to keep them off the street. The design and the color palette seem fine to me. My concerns are primarily this question that we have asked just now, understanding the grading intent, and I too would be extremely interested in figuring out if there's any language anywhere that allows grading like that in the riparian corridor. I do think that we need an alternative to the steps protruding into the buffer zone. The question that Vice Chair Polgar asked about the widowmaker potential of the remaining eucalyptus, I think is a good question. You all will remember the project that we approved, a year or so ago, that's at the end of Magnolia Street, just where it dead ends on the west side of the highway, just where it dead ends into Highway 1. I walk by there frequently, and that house is coming along well. They removed some eucalyptus from that plot, but there are several or many that are very close to that house, and also to the lot to the west of it, which is to have another house. And I have often, every time I walk by there, I wonder what is the right safety concerns that, I mean, do we leave that up to the homeowner to keep his fingers crossed that these big wind events don't bring a tree or a branch down on the house, or might it make sense for the city to require some safety measures there? So I'll stop there and call on Commissioner Benjamin again.
This will shock you, but I didn't mean to have my hand up. Thank you.
Any other discussion from the commission? Well, in that case, Jill, I like your proposal to take a break and let staff organize response to the issues on the table. How long would you like to have?
I think we need a nice, healthy 10 minutes.
You're
8:35.
fast workers, you're quick workers.
Well, we've been working and we have some ideas, but we do need to talk. So thank you for this.
Okay,
All right.
well, let's temporarily adjourn and reconvene at 9:35, please. Thank you. Well, we'd be happy to hear from staff when you're ready.
Thank you for your patience, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. We would recommend a continuance to a date uncertain, given the revisions related to the riparian buffer that need to take place and some clarifying other information that we anticipated that this is going to take a little bit of time. And so a couple of things on our list include, as we've talked about, the encroachments into the riparian buffer, more clearly identifying the riparian buffer. Also, tree maintenance, addressing the tree maintenance in relation to the eucalyptus trees. Minimizing grading and also adding some split rail fencing, identifying the riparian buffer edge. And I think that's about it.
What's your opinion, Scott, on our input about language to more precisely define the protection in the buffer and potentially rehabilitation in the buffer?
Yes, absolutely. So we are going to draft some language within the conditions of approval that would enforce and clarify the requirements related to the riparian buffer.
Yeah, well, this is that's all good. I think this is the moment when we want to be certain that that staff has captured what is of importance to the commissioners. So let's not rush through this. I see Commissioner Benjamin has his hand up, and then Vice Chair Polgar.
Actually, Commissioner Polgar had her hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
Thank you, Chair Reddick. I just wanted to add, in terms of what I was hearing you say, Scott, that I do think that if there are, one of the things I realize now is that because I wasn't understanding where the buffer was, the boundary was, I think, and I should have gotten this actually, is that where the grading takes place, particularly within so within that buffer, right now, there's nothing proposed to be done in terms of at least in the landscaping plan to address those areas. So I think that that's a key thing, and that's clearly laid out in our LCP that we need to, that in that, for those uses, if there is disturbance or, that it needs to be restored with native or ideally native vegetation or at least non-invasive exotic, if it's not, it specifies that. So I think that that would also need to be clear that if there is grading that has to happen, because there's no other option, for in terms of building the structure, then I do want to make sure that whatever, if that happens, of course, in that buffer area, that there's a proposal so that, because then I could really see that now the way it is, that erosion would be a major issue. I would be really concerned, having clearly after earlier said that I wasn't concerned about erosion. Well, now I am. So that I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you, Vice Chair Polgar. Very good points. Commissioner Benjamin.
From Vice Chair Polgar's lips. Also, I appreciate that the code allows for structures in a reduced buffer setback if it's necessary. With respect, I'm not sure that I feel like the 3,100 square feet is an absolute necessary constraint, a hard constraint, compared to the possibility of redesigning in a way that it's not necessary. I hope that they can find a way to do it, but if they can't, I hope that they'll give consideration to revising the design to avoid the need for it. With respect to erosion, I'll just say in the conditions, if the design is great and they never need to deal with the erosion, that's wonderful. But we should have conditions that make it observable and hold them responsible for managing it in the conditions. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Scott, would you indulge us, please, and run through the list of issues that you've heard tonight and that you intend to work on, just so we can all be confident that that is the comprehensive list?
Yes, absolutely. So starting out, on the top of the list is changing the door on the northeastern side of the house to a window and removing the steps that currently encroach into the riparian buffer. Tree management, add language that requires the management of the eucalyptus trees. Eliminate the grading within the riparian buffer, add split rail fencing, add native riparian landscaping within the buffer to reduce any runoff. Let's see, and have the biologist review the plant palette before, once revised. And I think that's it.
Through the
Commissioner
chair.
Hernandez.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The this project has been with the city since 2016. I would have hoped that issues of grading and what's appropriate or not would have come up during the planning process. And so I understand the concern that's been expressed about, well, is this really necessary? But I also just want to express the concern that we're striking the right balance from a due process perspective. You know, I'm sure city staff will think about things in the conversations they've had with the applicant. You know, it's a long time to plan a project, and there've been many revisions on it. So, you know, that's not all on the city. The applicant has a responsibility just like anyone else who's going through the process. But I just wanted to share that concern as it looks like we're gonna probably, you know, push this off for a date uncertain.
Through the chair, I would really like to acknowledge our concern about how long this has taken as well. Staff has worked really hard with this applicant and they've made a lot of progress. We do need to note for the record that resubmittals are sometimes quite delayed. And we have asked for things like really good buffer indications on your plans, which has been one of your concerns tonight. And I think it's part of the reason why we didn't see some of the encroachments, and it's been really, really difficult. So we're sorry that this has not been quite ready for you. It's very close to ready. We're pleased with how much progress it made since it went through last time. We would encourage this applicant to work very quickly to get back here because we have fresh wetland delineations, we have up-to-date BRE, we have good direction from you on all of the matters for grading, staging, buffer demarcation, restoration, etc. And I think Scott's got the list where we've calibrated our lists, and I think they're quite comprehensive. I did want to go into a nit on the trees, just because this is something you could expect from this coming back. Eucalyptus trees don't require a tree removal permit per the city's heritage tree ordinance. So we've worked up a condition about long-term tree maintenance, which would be more about a targeted riparian restoration plan. So that as trees are phased out over time, they could be replaced with riparian vegetation and would not require the typical tree replacement that your heritage tree ordinance requires, which is usually about maintenance of canopy. And what you're trying to do here is a little bit different. You're enhancing a riparian habitat area, and maybe trees are included in that, and maybe they aren't. So we want to keep that a little more open based on your discussion, as well as our biologist and our own continued and improved understanding about this habitat area that we've had through our land use plan update. So I think staff's got it. We will really try hard to keep working with our applicant and bring you something soon.
Thank you, Jill. That all makes sense. Commissioner Gorn?
I just wanted to say quickly, it's pretty clear that that the project, that everybody seems to be willing, like that this is a good project, that everybody seems to be in agreement this is a good project. I think we're all ready to say yes to it, but that riparian corridor is right up against it, and I didn't realize how close that was. So yes, it's going to take a little bit of work, but I don't think that's going to get in the way of, and I don't think it's going to scuttle the project is all. So
Well said. I personally would like to thank Vice Chair Polgar for her insightful questions about the grading plan. I realize now that when I was studying those plans, I didn't put two and two together and sort of mentally map the buffer onto those other plans. I think perhaps, Jill, you alluded to this a few minutes ago, but going forward, doing that, drawing the buffer on other relevant plans would, of course, be very helpful. Vice Chair Polgar?
I just wanted to echo Commissioner Hernandez and Commissioner Gorin's comments about that I came in and I do like this project. I like the way it's set into the setting of it, kind of it fits, in my opinion, with landscape. And so I guess when I was suggesting my comments, Scott, about the buffer area, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that there be a change to the house. It was more in how that buffer area is dealt with, if there are changes that happen or things that happen that it be restored. And so, because I do see that a lot of time and effort and a lot of really good changes have gone into this. So I just wanted to make that clear that it wasn't a dislike of the actual house or the design and stuff. It was just more the concerns about the buffer. So yeah, I think we're all kind of on the same page, at least on that.
Yes, we hear you on that. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say, I also thought the design was attractive. The way I read the code, you only get to do grading in the buffer if it's necessary. And if necessary is defined as what's needed for a 3,100 square foot home, I'm not sure if that meets my personal belief about necessary. And in Scott's list, I'm not sure I heard conditions for monitoring and managing erosion in the buffer. And if it was there, I apologize. Or if I'm the only one who was concerned about that, I apologize, but I don't think I am.
Yeah, well, personally, I would think that a legitimate item to ask staff to add to that list. Any other comments about the list that Scott has provided us, or anything else for tonight? Well, in that case, I think a motion to continue to a date uncertain would be appropriate.
I move to continue PDP 15064 to a date uncertain.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Bridget, if we can have a roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Benjamin,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorn, we lost Commissioner Gorn?
Apparently.
Oh, he's over in he's coming back.
Where'd he go?
There you are.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Polgar,
Yes.
and Chair Reddick.
Yes.
Motion 5-0.
Thank you, Bridget. I think that brings us to, on our agenda, the director's report.
It does. Thank you, Chair Reddick. We'd like to give you a little more detailed report tonight because we haven't in a while and we are still a little bit early and we've been very busy. So just to give you some updates. Your next meeting is April 27th and we are preparing for your third in a row or this year short-term rental study session. We weren't ready for it tonight. We're looking forward to seeing you then and should hopefully be able to wrap up the remaining questions you had. On May 11th, the city engineer is planning to bring the capital improvement program to you for a general plan conformance finding. And that's always an interesting evening to see the projects in the hopper. If we're ready to go, we could have the short-term rental ordinance at a public hearing before you as soon as May 25th. We'll see how that goes. We also have staff working on bringing you an update in a study session format for that Main and Kelly project proposal. It has gone through 3 rounds of Architectural Advisory Committee review. They saw it at a very, very conceptual stage and then with more developed plans over the last few months. And we would like to touch base with the commission before they they wrap up their design. It's such an important project and there's a lot of details, and we think it would be good to check in. And we know there's a lot of community interest, so having it staged for you with the coverage that the commission has, we think is important. For the city council, a couple items of note coming up. Of course, they're going to be working on the budget, and they've had pretty full agendas. We would like to bring the accessory dwelling unit ordinance back to them, hopefully in May, if we're ready to go. As you know, that came up a bit in your discussions about Measure D, and so that will be very helpful. Speaking of Measure D, we did not receive an appeal on the item for Red Hawk Court, so we're just moving the certificates on as you had acted, and we've worked with that applicant, and we will continue to work with them. So I just want to reassure you that everything that you asked us to do has been done, communicated, followed up on, and is being buttoned up. Also for City Council, our friends over at San Mateo County are wrapping up their Connect the Coast Side congestion management plan for the Mid-Coast, and they are trying to be ready to make a presentation to City Council. I'll let you know when that date is firmed up. Right now they're looking at mid-June, the June 15th meeting for council. It would be a nice one for the commission to watch while it's happening or afterwards. Of course, it's recorded, but it's something where we've been doing a lot of collaboration with those staff members. We share data, we share traffic runs, and we definitely want to reassure the community that these are not siloed projects. We have a lot of overlap in our thinking and discussing.
What day is that?
It's tentative for June 15th, the second June City Council meeting.
Thanks.
Director actions on April 7th. There was an administrative approval for an accessory dwelling unit at 480 Wavecrest. And on April 21st, we'll be looking at another one at 225 Valdez. These are all qualifying for that administrative review. We continue to host our, thanks to Bridget, our virtual conference rooms, just to try to give folks a chance if a neighbor has questions or comments and City Hall remains closed. And I'll make a note about that. We're really looking forward to opening City Hall, and staff is, there's quite a variety of where we are with respect to being vaccinated, and but it's happening, and so it's very exciting. And when we get a target date, we'll let you know, and we can't wait to be open. On April 15th, the Architectural Advisory Committee is meeting. They meet at 8:30. They have an update from our community, or excuse me, our climate action project manager, Veronica, has presented to you in the past about the climate action plan. And she's going to give the Architectural Advisory Committee an overview of the electrification code ideas that are coming forward. It's an ordinance, and it shifts away from use of fossil fuels to all electric power, and it'll be an interesting one. And we can bring that to the commission as well at some point. Let's see here.
When was that?
That's the morning of the 15th. That overlaps with another thing we're doing that I'll talk about in a little bit. So kind of a big deal. Yeah. We have a really busy week. Let me keep going. Getting punchy. Let's talk about a special meeting actually that we're having tomorrow night. This is a kickoff for the housing element update. And I actually have a few slides that I'd like to share on this, if I can pull this off. Because we really want to get the word out, and we do have a growing registration list for this meeting. Oh, Bridget, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Hang on. What can I do without Bridget?
Should be able, you have permission.
I should have given it to you. Yeah, hang on. Let's just yell at me if this doesn't look right. Do you have a
You're
blue
good.
slide?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so we're in housing element cycle 6. We're working on a housing element that needs to be submitted to the Department of Housing and Community Development by the end of 2022. And so we have this year and next year to complete it. So this is kicking off outreach. The city is in contract, as are all the jurisdictions in San Mateo County, with the 21 Elements group that I've talked to you about in the past. And I think some of you have actually also had gone to some planning commission functions that they've hosted over at the City of San Mateo main library. So 21 Elements, just to same page us all, is they're an ongoing initiative. This is not their first rodeo with housing elements with San Mateo County jurisdictions. This is actually, I think, their 3rd time. I worked with them in another city on cycle 4, and they also did this with cycle 5, and here we are with cycle 6. They have branded Let's Talk Housing as their community engagement effort, and you may see this logo from time to time. And this is about getting our housing elements updated to be part of our general plans, and in our case, wholly consistent with our land use plan. So tomorrow night, they're going to have the 4th of 4 sessions for kicking off housing elements. And what they've been doing is grouping cities together kind of by theme. And so we are running with the last evening with coastal cities and small towns. So we're included with Pacifica, Daly City, the unincorporated San Mateo County that obviously includes the mid-coast, and also Woodside and Atherton. Clearly, there's a lot of overlap in a way, and yet we're all very, very different. And so the structure of the meeting will be to have the 21 Elements. Consultants are going to present things that are common for everyone with their housing elements. And then there will be breakout sessions for each city. So there is registration for this event. And when you register, it's very helpful to them if you can put in your city that you're coming to attend. And in your breakout room, you will see Scott and Brittany and me, along with a facilitator who's just excellent. David Driscoll, I've worked with him before, and he's very, very good, and he's going to help us out. And we will have a Half Moon Bay centric part of this meeting. This is an hour-and-a-half meeting, and I believe an hour of it will be this kickoff for our housing element. And we will have a presentation and lots of time for discussion that is all about Half Moon Bay. So these are the facts. It is obviously virtual again, and it's easy to register. We've been hosting a page on the community development planning site for our housing element, and we're building it up. We'll start making it more prominent as we go. This is just getting started, and there'll be a lot more opportunities for folks to work on this. They can sign up for our mailing list and a lot of other ways to participate. So we will see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock if you're interested. I know a couple commissioners have signed up which is wonderful. And we just are glad that you're doing it. You are all welcome, but you got to be careful because you, as observers, that's absolutely a-okay. As participants, we could have a Brown Act little bumping into that. So let's be careful. I know 2 of you are on board now. If we see 3, please just observe. And if you are wanting to do it a different way, let me know tomorrow so that we can review it and make sure everything's going to be okay. And if you're interested, 21 Elements is going to have other all kinds of other ways for folks to learn more about housing and housing elements. And they are having a session the following week about all about RENA. And I don't know what happened to the date. It's supposed to be the 21st. I apologize. I thought this was on my slides. So anyway, we'll send you a link and email so you can check into their page from time to time. If you have any questions about the housing element or the outreach or the approach that we're digging into on that, happy to field those now. And then, of course, I have one more meeting to tell you about this week. And we'll go ahead and move to that. Thursday.
Sorry, I have
Yep.
one question.
Yes.
So if we aren't able to attend the Let's Talk About Housing community meeting, not the one on the 21st, the one tomorrow, will there be some, like, is that, will there be like a summary of kind of some of the key points and stuff that we can, or will you be able to report to us at another planning commission? Because I definitely would be, I won't be able to attend, but I wanted.
That is okay. So there'll be a couple things. So for one thing, we are going to be recording comments live and sharing them with our participants as we go along to make sure that we get everything right. And you will get to see that summary. Meetings are also recorded. And I think the breakout sessions will be recorded. So we'll make sure that you have access to the input that we get. Yeah, Brittany's going to be making the presentation. Scott is recording. I'm going to manage the chat. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but we'll see. And we're really excited, actually. It's a different meeting format, and we're enjoying meeting with our colleagues in other cities. They're all working really hard as teams as well to support their city's needs, and they're really sincere, hardworking folks, and it's great. So enjoy if you can, and if not, we'll keep you posted, and there'll be more. All right. April 15th. Yes, sorry.
That's what I was going to ask about. Keep going.
Okay, we're there. Thursday morning, we are the top agenda item, the upfront first thing on the California Coastal Commission's agenda for the local coastal land use plan certification hearing. And so we encourage you to tune in and have it running. And if you're interested in commenting, of course, you can do that as well. The mayor and I will be making comments, and we're looking forward to it. I don't know if you have been able to get caught up. I did send you an email as soon as the staff report came out. The Coastal Commission staff is recommending certification, which is a wonderful milestone for the Planning Commission to hopefully feel really good about from all the work that you've done, and the ad hoc committee and our GPAC, and of course City Council, and then the community. So we also know we don't know what's going to happen. we're just staff will be present to answer questions if there are any for the local jurisdiction. So be assured that Brittany and I will be there the whole time, and we are prepared to cover any topic. We've been preparing ourselves for some time now. The commission process is, I know some of you follow a lot of their work, and I don't know if all of you do. So what we want to share with you is on their website for the agenda. If you want to attend the meeting, that's one thing. You're just going to log in through the Zoom. If you want to make a comment, you do need to register in advance. And I believe the cutoff for Thursday is tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. So do make a note of that. The other thing that the commission does is they have a cutoff for written comments, and the written comment cutoff was last Friday at 5 o'clock. They received a lot of comments on our land use plan update, and they were uploaded, I think yesterday, maybe today. I'm not sure. Time is flying by. So there's 2 batches of comments. One batch that came in before they published the report, and it's about 90 pages. And so those have been up since the report was loaded. And then there's a second batch of comments, and it's quite a few hundred pages of comments. So take a look at them. And if you have any questions about it, let me know. I can work with any of you to kind of give you an overview. This is not agendized tonight, and I'm not going to go into any of the content on this. I just want you to know where to find things if you haven't navigated their materials much before. Maybe you all have. It's really well done. It's very well presented. You can find all of it. And that's about it. We're really eager to hear their discussion, and I think it's fair to say we're very hopeful that they will accept the staff recommendation, in that it is wholly aligned with your action and the City Council's action.
That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. You, regarding this potential milestone with Coastal Commission, you mentioned all of the constituencies who should feel good about it, except for city staff. And
we feel great. We feel great.
We want you to know we appreciate more than we can say all of the hard work that you and the team at City Hall have put into this for years.
Well, thank you. We're not done. So we're really focused on what we need to do. But thank you. We will be prepared for Thursday. And if you have anything that you want to discuss with us coming up to it or after, just reach out and email, and we can talk about it. We will be very careful that you don't have this on your agenda right now, and so we'll figure out what next steps are. Obviously, implementation is something that we're also looking at, and any component of implementing our land use plan is going to be something that the Planning Commission is a steward of. You will be overseeing all of that work.
Thank you again.
That's it for our report tonight.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yeah, in my 15 years on the commission, that was the most impactful director's report I have ever heard. Thank you. That was an amazing list, and that doesn't happen just with a lot of great workers who push hard. That happens because there's a manager who knows how to get it done. So I am personally very impressed, to say touched, by your focus and your devotion and your ability to keep all of these plates spinning somehow. I wish I had a quarter of 1% of your skill at that. So thank you.
You're here.
With respect to the housing, I was concerned about a Brown Act meeting, and I struggle with how to participate without participating. As everyone who knows me knows, it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. So I'm inclined to not attend, but not for lack of interest. So I'll think about that some more. So thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Benjamin. Do commissioners have any communications at this point in our last item on the agenda? Anything to share? Commissioner Benjamin again.
A real hand. Yeah, there's one new item. I saw that there was a story in the Half Moon Review a day or so ago, or I guess it was maybe Wednesday, now that I think about it, about preparing for the summer crowds. And I just wanted, I know from time to time, some of my colleagues in other neighborhoods have mentioned concerns that their neighbors had. And I just wanted to mention that there's a bit of a ruckus in Casa del Mar about having a portalet placed in the neighborhood for the convenience of visitors. This is one of those hard to find the win situations, and it's not agendized, so we can't talk about it, but I just wanted to get it out there so you were aware that there is a certain level of discomfort about that.
I don't want to discuss, but what did you say? I'm sorry, there was a what installed?
There will be, the proposal is for a portalet to be installed so that visitors who choose to park in the Casa del Mar neighborhood have an alternative to tying a knot in it or relieving themselves in the neighborhood, which has been an unfortunate tradition that we have seen too often.
They can always leave something in one of the Amazon delivery vans.
How thoughtful. So they are envious of the Poplar cleanup. We understand it's our beach and we spend money there. So I'm sure they'll have concerns about how they want to deal with that, but just wanted you to be apprised of it. On a personal note, I will, if an additional meeting is needed during May to respond to something, I just wanted to give you a heads up that from the 16th to the 21st, I will be out of the state. I will have had my second jab and I get to go see my 96-year-old dad. So that's a high priority for me. There may be some other travel coming. So please, if you see other meetings, let me know so that I can try to work around them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Any other communications? Any motion to adjourn in that case?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Commissioner Benjamin, I believe, seconded it first.
Oh,
Would you like to
Okay.
do a roll call, please, Bridget?
Commissioner Benjamin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gorn,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Polgar,
Aye.
and Chair Reddick.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Pirates have it.
Yes,
Hi,
we started a
everyone.
tradition.